On today's episode, Survive and Thrive 8791, we welcome back head coach Bo Ryan one last time before his induction into the Basketball Hall of Fame on Sunday, October 13th, 2024. Coach today is going to talk about how his dad made an impact on his life and how his head high school basketball and college coach Ron Rainey impacted his life. Today's episode is going to be a good one. Here we go.
Good morning. What is up? Good afternoon. Good evening. If you're working the third shift, you're catching us here. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decorah. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios, high above University Avenue on the west side of the state capital of Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin. You can follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, the big X at Decorah 8791, as well as hitting me up on Facebook at Tim Decorah. Glad you could join us today wherever you happen to be. We've been extending our reach for quite a bit here. Today we welcome back future Hall of Fame head coach, and maybe by the time you listen to it, Coach Ryan will already be in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. And because of the star power, Coach, that you have, our listeners have gone up incrementally in large doses because of the stories you tell and the lessons you share and the many hats you've worn. So Coach is going to join us here this Thursday episode. And then we'll be back with Coach Ryan after the Hall of Fame, after his induction, after we all get back from Massachusetts. We'll have Coach back on to recap the Hall of Fame. Anything you're looking forward to for the Hall of Fame, Coach? I mean, just right now.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing a lot of people who were able to make it and to share some memories with my family and friends getting together, also to honor the other inductees. There's some really good people, good contributors to the game of basketball in one way or another, either as a player, a coach, or somebody like the owner of the Fever and Pacers. He's going in. And a little byline there is my son, Matt, who does private instruction out in California, out in L.A.,
Hey, should we give him a little promo here? Matty Ryan.
Well, Matty Ryan has
Matty Ryan.
He can't
of course.
He doesn't even advertise. He's full all the time. He has to turn people away because word of mouth got out through Conan O'Brien and Adam Sandler and Heidi Klum, the Minutions.
I know he's a trainer to some of the stars too, and this is basketball training.
Yeah, he teaches shooting and all phases of the game, and he'll get a chance to be there with his siblings. I just when you ask about how I feel or the experience or whatever, it's just going to be a joy to see a lot of people come together and share stories, anecdotes.
Yeah.
It'll be one of those, hey, do you remember when? That's what happens at events like this. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to hear some news stories.
Yeah, when you're sharing the stage, and I know you're probably a lot older than some of the people you're going in with, same age, maybe a little bit younger, but that list of, okay, Coach Ryan, who I know, just a regular guy from Chester, Pennsylvania, my college coach, and I've known you for probably going on 40-some years now, and you're going in with Michael Cooper. I mean, I was a huge Showtime Lakers guy, and Michael Cooper was the three-man in that game, and the defensive stopper.
He could play defense.
I know,
that's for sure.
He could have played for the Pioneers back in the day. But then you got Vince Carter, Vinsanity. I think if you look him up, if you haven't,
his vertical was unbelievable.
Yeah, he jumped over that guy from, I think, Team Turkey. And it's one thing if he was a 5'9" little point guard, but he was a 7'1" guy and Vince Carter
That
jumps.
he jumped over was 7-1, huh? I didn't know he was.
I think he was 7-1.
Wow.
And he jumps over the top to avoid the charge. Everybody now Euro steps right or left. Vince didn't have the Euro step. He just went right over that
arrow step.
He had the vertical arrow step.
Yeah.
And then Chauncey Billups, Colorado guy, Detroit Pistons.
He could score.
Yeah, he was just tougher nails. And I know the last episode we ended with talking about Doug Collins from Illinois State. I think he was College Player of the Year. One of the few players that went number one in the draft. What else? 72 Olympics. I think we talked about having his, stabbed in the back or heart ripped out by the officials.
That's a travesty.
Look that one up for the listeners. 72 Olympics. A lot of stuff going on in that 72 Olympics with Munich. But we're gonna get started here. We're gonna do what's called a little freestyle today. We have a little bit of an old script that we'll kind of use a little bit, and that probably gets me to our sponsor a little bit. Is that the script that Tommy Anderson has used with his Buck and Honey's restaurants in Dane County, around the Madison area and Sun Prairie, Wanakee, Mount Horeb, and Monona is an old script from his dad, Bomber Anderson. And he's used that script, and then he's added his own flavor into it with his different meals. And certainly he's kept the budget down to where the regular person and the higher-ups and can come and enjoy a meal and a pizza at his place. So I want to give Buck and Honey's a shout-out because they sponsor our remote broadcast, the studio here that we have. And the studio will move around. And if you have a person that either you want to be on the episode, on the podcast, and you have something that you've survived and then you've thrived. We're trying to feature people on the podcast who have gone through something maybe tough, life-changing, altering, and then the big thing that people can learn from our episodes is what did they do to survive and thrive. And that gets us into the first part of this. I know we've touched on Butch Ryan a little bit, and I'll share my memories of your dad, but we've touched on him a lot. So maybe you can go back to the beginning of time of when Butch Ryan came into the world, and then you can touch on that about his growing up days. And then I think you got a nice little story about Billy White Shoes Johnson. Again, listeners, look him up sometime on YouTube, but how he came and thanked your dad for some of the stuff. Just go ahead, Coach.
Well, my dad was born in 1924, and his home life was really non-existent. His mom made bathtub gin, died when he was 9 years old, and my grandfather was a raging alcoholic who was never around. And so my dad, I hear stories from other people. He really didn't tell me, but he was on the streets most of the time, a couple foster homes, living with a relative here or there, never had anything stable. And he goes to high school, is recruited because he was a heck of an athlete at the private school, St. James. And unfortunately, he had a lot of demerits because he was late for class. He would hooky. He would take off, and sometimes it was to sell newspapers, to set pins at the bowling alley. But he did whatever he could to he kind of had to fend for himself because there wasn't any help from his parents.
Yeah, that's funny that you dropped that hooky in there. Playing hooky, which is not going to school and
people don't use that anymore.
Doing something else, yeah.
So anyhow, he kind of had to do things all for himself, and he had to be a little bit of a con guy. He had to be a little bit of he had his shoe shine box. He did a lot of odd jobs. I remember him talking about not having a winter coat, and they would stuff newspapers down inside their shirts or inside their pant legs. And he said, newspapers were as good as having a wool coat on. So he gets dismissed from the high school because of too many demerits. And so he went down and signed up and joined the Navy and served in World War II as a Bronze Star, which he left me. And he survived all this, but he was going to make sure that his son and daughter, any of his children that he did have, and my parents had two, my older sister as well as myself, and we were going to do things the right way. We were going to have a better life than he did, and my mom, obviously, growing up on a farm area, she and him worked very closely together. They were opposites, but they believed in the right things and what they wanted to do for their children and give them a chance. So they gave us a chance. And
opposites. It seems like those opposites always attract.
Yeah, and so so he did some things that we found kind of to be comical. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but we had a picture in the basement that it was a picture of Frank Sinatra, and it was to Butch, to a good friend, and it was signed Frank Sinatra.
Really?
Well, then I saw something that my dad had written out. It was my dad's signature. It was his handwriting on the picture, but he had it in the basement, and he told everybody, "Yeah, I got to know Frank. There, I got a picture of him. He signed it." But yeah, he would do some things sometimes that were a little unorthodox. We talked about the football tickets for the NFL championship and all that. But
one of my favorite stories of all time.
He had to do what he had to do, and so I just tried to always please both my parents. And tried to take advantage of the street knowledge that my dad had and the book knowledge that my mom possessed. She would read a book a week. She'd read all different mysteries or self-improvement books or whatever. She would read anything she'd get her hands on. So that's the household that yours truly is growing up in. And, I think when my dad would get thank yous from players that he coached, I always looked at that. I kind of didn't think that much of it at the time, but later on, what made me decide to go into teaching and coaching was the fact that he had an impact on so many young people to help them get better. And the parents in our hometown area were like, "Hey, you're going to play for Mr. Ryan. You're going to play for Mr." Especially the moms were like, "You're going to play for him," because he was firm, very firm, but fair, and didn't mistreat, didn't hit players, didn't do any of that. But he was tough on them. He demanded a lot, and a lot of the parents were like, "Hey, we want our kids playing for him." So that's why I never berated players on the sideline or in post-game interviews. I never blamed it on players if we didn't get a W. You never heard me say, "We just didn't come ready to play today," or whatever. Where you're putting it on the players. If we took a bump, we took a bump because I didn't do my job the way I should have. And that's just the way it is. So that influence from him was earned through watching him and how he coached and how he did things around the house and what he did for the community. For example, if there was a worker that got hurt or there was somebody in the neighborhood that something happened to him, what he would do is he would do a fundraiser. He would get a basket, a big bushel basket, and go to all the bars and taverns in the area and get a bottle donated from each place. And it was a basket of cheer. That's what it was called. And so they would sell tickets, and the winner got the basket.
Basket of cheer.
Basket of cheer minus one bottle. Well, Butch had to take, he had to take his cut. But anyhow, and then they would deliver it to the, the money to the family, and it kept them alive. And I can remember that happening several times where it tied somebody over enough to where they got back to work. And, because back then, health insurance, when people got hurt, it wasn't anything like it's the way it's available now. So there were families, if the person got hurt and they're not working, they're not getting any money. So they didn't have any unemployment. So those were the families that my dad and mom would help. And my mom would make meals for them. And also my dad's company went on strike a few times, and there's just so many hot dogs and beans you can eat, Tim. And Spam, and man, we thought Spam was fillets. We thought it was pretty good.
My mouth is watering right now thinking about Spam and hot dogs and beans.
But you wanted to know what it was like growing up with him. Well, that gives you an idea. And he took me to so many games, to such so many environments that involved competition. That's where I got it from. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I think we're going to put a little bow on this. Again, pardon the pun, a little bow on this segment. But I want to give my 2 cents about just what I heard you speak of, because of how well I know your family, and probably the boys more than the girls. But your family back then seems to match up with your current family in that you do a lot of the service work. You're getting paid for doing it, and working with kids and running camps and doing all those things. And you got that from your dad, doing that service work, and somebody's having a tough time, and your mom is also being of service to your fellow man, your neighbors, your people.
Well, now we do it through Coaches versus Cancer, for example. You know, a way to help.
And I look at what Maddie's doing, and I look at what Will has been doing, where they're getting paid for it, but they're giving back, and they're working with kids, and Maddie's doing that stuff with the Stars and other people in California. And then Will was coaching, started out as an assistant, and then worked his way all the way up to head coach at UW Green Bay. And then now he's into an AAU program that is still giving back. And then meanwhile, Kelly and the girls are kind of doing the stuff that maybe your mom was doing, is just being supportive and being supportive of their spouses and their families, and doing some of the things behind the scenes.
Yeah,
so,
and Megan is quite the entrepreneur with the 4 hot yoga studios.
Oh, okay.
And she's and you know,
starting to get loose now, Coach.
A mom of actually 4, and you know, she had a rough go during COVID, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Who was going to yoga studios, to Dragonfly, mm-hmm. when really there was no action, mm-hmm. And so she survived that. Speaking of thriving and surviving,
well, she might be a guest in the future.
Yeah, she hung in there. We tried to help. Other people helped, and then now she's back on her feet again, and they're doing really well. Mm-hmm. And then Brennan and Marin are busy with their you talk about some terrors.
I saw firsthand those 2 terrors, and if I didn't see them, I could hear them.
Well, Brennan has 2 now, and Marin 3. And so, yeah, they are very active and enjoy life, and enjoy saying no and more. More and no are the 2 most popular words with 1 to 3-year-olds.
Yeah,
I don't know if you experienced that with your children.
Getting to know that with my two grandkids. So we're going to put a little wrap on this first segment. Talked about Butch Ryan and some other pieces that helped pave the way for that induction into the Hall of Fame on October 13th, 2024. And we're gonna come back here in just a moment to talk about segment 2, and we're gonna talk about a guy that I got to know through you. He did not coach. I know he spent a couple of years coaching at UW-Platteville with you, but I saw him just more of a guest and a visitor, and then got to know him as well. Coach Ron Rainey, and some of us, maybe not all of us, but some of us called him the Rain Man, and he just had just one of the characters that I'm glad I had an opportunity to get to know, like your dad. But we'll talk about him shortly. So we will be back here in just a little bit with segment number 2. All right, we are back. Segment number 2. We're going to talk about coach of Coach Ryan's, and a guy that I got a chance to know early, maybe in my college career. And that is a gentleman by the name of Coach Ron Rainey. Was Coach Ryan's head basketball coach at Chester High School, Chester, PA, and then would take a job as the head coach at Wilkes University, and one of his top recruiting class, that first recruiting class to Wilkes University was none other than point guard Bo Ryan back then. And just a lot of great memories when I think of Ron Rainey and some of us that got to know him maybe early on. Maybe we didn't call him Coach Rainey, but we called him the Rain Man because he had some great points, funny stories. When I was at Platteville from 87 to 91, he was more of a visitor. Every couple of times he would come and visit, and then he would later become a coach for you. And then when you took over at Wisconsin, I'd stop in, and on occasion he would be there as well. But there's just some great learning experiences, I'm sure, lessons learned, and also very much like you. I don't know if he was a better storyteller than you, or maybe you got your storytelling from him, but we're going to talk about the Rain Man here, Coach Ron Rainey, and then maybe just like you did with your dad, kind of give us the when he came into the world, if you can go all the way back to then, and then just kind of lead us up.
Well, he was born in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. The infamous flood of whatever, I don't know, can't remember the year. But anyhow, pretty much wiped out the whole city. But he ended up going to Penn State, and he was captain of the basketball team and the baseball team. The baseball team went to the World Series, then the College World Series. So, and he was the star athlete, but he was good at everything he did, whether it was racquetball. He was ranked number 2 in the nation for 60 and over, 70 and over. He kept losing to some left-hander, which really bothered him. So he was only number 2 in the country. But he was that good of an athlete. And he was also the guidance counselor. So having been the president of my class, I would be in his office quite a bit because we had to, take care of business with our class and make sure everything was done correctly. And needless to say, we spent a lot of time talking basketball.
More of on being in somebody's office for a good reason versus being
exactly.
in trouble.
It wasn't like I was sent down there. So he was a guy that was very demanding, again, but fair. And I know there are several stories here that I could tell you about him. But I just think of I think of one that we'll never forget is we go to the state tournament in 1965. That is my senior year in high school. And
you guys were 25 and
we're like 20-something and and then so we were going to the Palestra. We had to play 3 games to win the to win the district, and then to play in the finals. But the first game, he could kind of tell that the guys were maybe a little nervous. He told me later. So he was looking for some opportunity to loosen us up on the bus. It's only a 15-minute ride from Chester to the University of Pennsylvania, to Palestra, which what a place. 9,000 people screaming and yelling, and most of them were Chester fans because Chester had such a reputation in basketball.
By the way, I've visited a lot of places with just whatever, visiting and arenas and football fields. Chester, or not Chester, but the Palestra is on my bucket list.
It's quite the experience. And so we're riding in the bus, and we get off at South Street, and he sees this bum walking across the street in front of the bus, carrying a bag over one shoulder and kind of not quite sure where he's going, but he's walking across the street. So Coach Rainey takes the window and pulls it down on the bus, and he yells out to the guy, "Hey, buddy!" And the guy turns around and says, "Yeah, what do you want?" And Coach Rainey goes, "Hey, you lost a shoe." And the guy looks down, and he looks back up at Coach Rainey and goes, "No, I didn't. I found one." Well, if the bus, so we don't know what to do until somebody in the back of the bus couldn't hold it any longer and went, you know, that noise you make when you're trying to
hold it in,
trying to stifle a laugh, and then we all just lost it. I think we won by 30. And you talk about a loose team. And the other one, speaking of the Palestra, is...
Yeah, for you young coaches out there, you can probably dress that story up however you want. That's a good way to loosen up the team.
Well, he had us loose. And then so the second game, you could dunk back then. And we're throwing them down. I could even dunk now and then, but the rest of my guys pretty much, I would say 80% of our team dunked easily. And they were doing 360s. We were doing tomahawks. We saw the other team watching us. And Coach Rainey noticed that too. So what he said was to us in the huddle before you go out on the court for the jump ball, he said, "Guys, I saw them looking at you. You've got them intimidated. Here's what we're going to do." Schamberger, who was our 6'6", 6'7" center with a 7'1" wingspan, he tells this guy, "Sham, as soon as you get the ball, I want you to dunk that thing. So just go up, and I don't care if you charge or whatever, but I just want you to throw it down." So Sham catches a pass about 15, 20 feet along the baseline, tucks it under his arm, takes 3 steps, goes up and dunks the ball and holds on to the rim.
Place is going crazy.
Because he said, "Now we're going to intimidate him." So he's hanging on the rim, and Coach Rainey gets up, and if I didn't grab his arm, I think he might have struck that poor young man. Coach Rainey temporarily lost it, and fortunately, we ended up winning the game rather easily. But Coach Rainey meant well with what he said, but our teammate did not quite understand what he meant.
The intended purposes were not quite all there. Put it on the floor, get a rhythm dribble, and then go and hammer one down.
And then we moved to college, and then we're practicing one Saturday morning, and it's homecoming weekend, and we're going through some drills, and all of a sudden these guys with real long hair and dressed, kind of mod, and they come in like they own the gym. They come in, well, Coach Rainey says, "Hey, what the heck are you guys doing in here?" And the guy yells back. He says, "Hey, we're the Box Tops, and we're here to perform for homecoming." And the guy, Coach Rainey, looks at him, and he's thinking, "Box Tops, huh?" He yells back at him, I don't care if you're the whole blank, blank, blankety cereal box. Get your out of here. And so we started moving towards the band, and the band quickly left outside the doors. But Coach Rainey's line about, I don't care if you're the whole cereal box. And they had a song, Ticket for an Airplane or something like that. But it was a hit back in 68, 69, somewhere in there.
The Box Tops didn't realize that Coach Rainey his practices were closed to the public.
Yeah. And then another story is that when he coached with me at Platteville, there was a boat in Dubuque that was sat in the water, and it was legal to have gambling on the boat.
I think I helped pay for that boat. I know maybe a rudder or so.
TJ saw that. TJ knew the boat.
Our good friend, teammate, and player TJ Van Wee probably paid for part of that boat as well.
Well, he would take a pencil, and as you walked up the plank to go onto the boat, he would lean over with the pencil and draw a line where the water came to. And he would turn around and tell everybody, hey, I'm going to win so much money that you're going to see that line 4, 5, 6 inches above that water level. I think he won once out of 10 times. I'm not sure, but the pencil, if anything, the pencil mark went down into the water. More weight, more currency came into the boat than came out of the boat.
Yeah,
but that's the Rain Man. That's Coach Rainey.
I think one of my favorite stories, and I'll let you tell it because you're a little bit better storyteller than I am, but it was either told by Saul Phillips, former player and now college coach at Ohio and out in South Dakota right now.
Yeah.
And then, or it was told by Will Ryan, was about how he masterminded his way into the Masters golf tournament, and this one's not too long, but Coach, can you tell the listeners about that?
Well, Coach Rainey always would say, I'll figure out a way. He's kind of like my dad. He would figure out his way into anywhere.
I was just thinking about that as well. Yeah, he's got these tricks and tricks.
And so he's got to get into the Masters. He tried to find a place where maybe he could sneak in or whatever, and because he didn't have the money to buy the pass to make it legal. So he went to the trunk of his car because he lived down in, at that time he was retired down near Myrtle Beach. And so he had his own car, and he went in the trunk and he pulled out an iron, and he goes running. He starts running to where the guy at the entrance at the gate could see him coming.
Running down Magnolia Way.
Yeah. So he's got this club in his hand, and he says to the guy, goes, whoa, where are you going? Is it, who was the player? Furyk. It was Furyk. So he says, I got Furyk. Furyk's left this in the car, and I got to get this club to him right away. So Coach Rainey got into the Masters and
tossed the club into the weed somewhere.
I don't know what he ended up doing with the club, but yeah. So no, I think he walked around with it until I think they told him he had to check it or something. But anyhow, yeah, that was.
Hopefully it wasn't his trusted 2-iron or maybe his gap wedge.
Coach Rainey was a pretty good golfer. Like I said, he was good at every sport he took up. He was good at tennis, racquetball, like I said, ranked. So, yeah, Coach Rainey's. There's some other stories that would pop into our heads at different times, and we start talking about him. And unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago, and he's sorely missed because he would keep things loose, and he was just fun to be around. He was just a good person.
Well, I know when I've done some of the research and looking at notes and the internet, and I ended up going. I know we did a recap or a look back at your feelings of the 2015 national title game, and I really watched that second half from about the 15-minute mark in, and there was a couple of times where they showed him in the crowd, and knowing that he passed away a couple of years ago, but then seeing him, I don't remember who he was sitting by. You kind of told me that story, but he was in, and he had his ticket on his lanyard, and he's got the ticket, and as soon as I saw him, I was probably smiling to myself of just what a nice human being he was, and his knowledge of and stories that he could tell always kept you loose, and he was just a great human being.
But he was a taskmaster when it came to getting things done and how we played at Chester and at Wilkes. He had a vision of how the game should be played, and the important thing when you're coaching is not you having the vision necessarily, it's your players having the vision, so they're all on the same page. So Coach Rainey was pretty good at that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, this is going to do it for Coach Ryan on the Survive and Thrive 87-91. My initial look at the first couple of weeks was to have Coach Ryan on the podcast. It was my way of honoring him as my college coach, and it was also a way for him to share the lessons that he taught. And I know before this whole thing even started, the podcast even started, he and I sat down and I said, we want to leave we can leave footprints, we can leave pictures about us, but there's going to be a verb. We're going to be on the internet somewhere for the rest of time, and players, your friends, colleagues, your family can now. There's going to be a video and an audio footprint for the rest of time, and it'll be these 5 or 6 episodes that you appeared on. And Coach is going to be one of those guys that will always be reoccurring because of our relationship. But really, it's the lessons that he has told and the stories that he has told that all relate back to how do you be of service to your fellow neighbor, mankind, and then how do you get things done, and what do you do to get it done? Because how your dad got it done and how Coach Rainey got it done and how you get it done now is a little bit unique, and I'm glad that you've been able to share that with our listeners. So Coach Ryan will be back, and the next time we'll have him back, we'll talk about that October 13th, 2024 evening where he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. And we'll probably try to leave the after party out of that. But if there's a few stories that, sometimes we do things to get the story out of it.
Well, we got the room reserved at the Marriott,
So yeah, we'll have that. We'll have somebody there checking IDs, so not everybody's going to get in, but the people that matter will get in that night. So our call to action again is take a look at the people that have impacted your lives, and maybe take a pencil or a paper and write those things down, and then try to every day write down what you're grateful for. And I guarantee you those probably will match up, and that's what you're all about. And Coach Ryan has really shared a lot of those stories and the lessons about learning how to just find a way to get it done. And there's been some ups and downs in his life, and there'll be ups and downs in our listeners' lives as well. But let's not dwell on that. Let's keep moving forward and just move on to the next thing. And in the end, you'll thrive like him and I have in the last, and tail end of our lives. But we're going to just keep getting it done. So next week, our episode is going to be, I'll send some trailers out, and you'll get an opportunity to hear what that next episode is. But if you want to appear on an episode, certainly send me an email, contact me, Survive and Thrive 8791. Hit me up on Instagram, social media, and let me know if you would like to be a part of, and you got a story to tell, or somebody who has a story about surviving and thriving. So Coach, good luck. I'll be out there. Some of the listeners might be out there. Not Survive and Thrive 8791. Some of the crew will be out there. But good luck with the Hall of Fame induction.
Well, thanks, Tim. And it'll be a lot of fun seeing some familiar faces and sharing stories.
Yeah, when your hands get a little sweaty palms, they say grab a cold drink, and that'll help it out. So maybe grab a cold bottle of water if you get a little sweaty palms. But knowing you, Coach, I think you're going to do just fine up there. You'll represent all of us, and really, I'm getting a little tingly right now. I think you're going to make us all proud that we were able to play.
I'm certainly going to try to let people know what they've meant to me and my family, and proud to represent all the different places where our family has happened to abide and had a chance to affect young people and show them some direction and help them along the way. And then even when they're done, sometimes you get a phone call and they need some help, and so you help them. And you just people have done that for us as a family, and this journey doesn't end simply because of an award. Still, when guys come back to town, or now with obviously with the internet, you get some messages and some emails that are very moving, and I certainly appreciate it. But I want to thank you as a former player and a member of the Platteville First National Championship team. I thought you would probably never speak to me because I didn't play as much as you probably wanted to.
You kept me out of the NBA,
Coach. I've been accused of that. But anyhow, it certainly is nice to see you doing this and sending a lot of messages yourself. So keep it up.
Yeah, well, it's a good, like I said, we wanted to harness us, and we brought a guy with some huge name power to the podcast, and then now we're going to extend that reach, and you'll always be coming back as a guest anytime you really want, but extending that reach of helping others and being of service and in more ways than you and I think that somebody's going to take a message from this whole thing. So until next time, keep surviving and thriving, and we will join you in a couple days with our next episode. All right. Have a great one.